Good evening, everybody. There are more than enough chairs, so for you folks who are trying to be in the back of the church, it's not going to work. There's lots of seats in the front, so please come on in and have a seat. I did not reserve seats or have anybody sitting anywhere special because as a consortium event, it was our hope that we would all just sit together and we would all be family. So I'm glad to see folks from all three institutions on both sides of the aisle. Good evening again, and my name is Kathleen Walker. I am the Shared Student Success Coordinator for the ReBUILD Detroit program. So I help work with all three campuses at trying to make sure we collaborate well on the services and support that the students have at each institution. But I am housed and do intense, I was going to say therapy, but mentoring here at U of DM. So welcome to all of you. We are so grateful that you are here tonight. I want to say to the scholars right now that we are so proud of you. This moment being right now is really big. Looking at where you came from your summer experience, and some of you might have seen yourselves up on the screen and went, oh my God, did I wear my hair like that? And now look at you. You have grown into fabulous young men and young women, and I think all of us in the room are to be thanked for it, but more importantly, we thank you, scholars, for trusting yourselves to us, to giving yourselves over to us, for stomping your feet at us, and for calling us whatever names you call us when we're not in the room, because they do know better not to do it in our face, okay? But what it really means is you wanted to stay with it. You wanted to really stay on your feet and off the ropes, and you trusted us to lead you and guide you. And so the fact that you're here tonight says we're doing it. You're making it. And so we really are here to celebrate you tonight. I'm not going to talk long because we have a whole program, as you can see, and so I want to move us forward. As you know, the consortium is made up of Marygrove College, University of Detroit Mercy, and Wayne State University. And so you're going to have facets running all through from all three institutions this evening, from administrators and faculty persons and the scholars themselves. So I'm looking forward to us, again, working all together. So now I'd like to introduce and call up to also welcome us and get us started is Dr. Ambika Mathur. And Dr. Mathur is the Dean of the Graduate School and Associate Provost at Wayne State University. Welcome, Dr. Mathur.
So I guess I'm shorter than I thought I was. So good evening and welcome everybody. It's a real pleasure to see all our wonderful scholars and more importantly, all the family members who have shown up in the support. It means a lot to us, to your students. So we are very happy that you could join us today. So I want to first thank all our scholars for giving us such a great year. You put up with us. As you all know, you are the first cohort, so you were our guinea pigs as we were building the program. So to put up with all our growing pains and some frustrations. I think there were as many tears on our side as there were on yours. So I was fortunate enough to be one of the three co-PIs leading this consortium. Dr. Gary Kulek, don't see this, there he is. From the University of Detroit Mercy, Dr. Sally Welch, who couldn't join us today from Marygrove, and I'm from Wayne State University. We have a fabulous group of faculty and staff, and as Ms. Walker had mentioned, the building of the cohorts was important enough for us within the scholars, but building the cohorts within the administration, the faculty, was just as important. And I think this first year has shown that this has been a very successful venture. We've had our tiffs, we've had our moments, but I think it's come together really well. And just looking at, again, as you're going to hear through the evening, this change that we are seeing in you, this whole atmosphere, the ambience of everybody coming together, working together, building that self-identity this feeling of being researchers embarking on a scientific career going forward, regardless of what area of careers you end up in, whether it's in academia or careers outside of academia, industry, biotechnology, and so on. I think you are on the path to success. You have all done a fabulous job, and it's just been a pleasure seeing everybody really go through this path and help us mature as you're maturing too. So I really want to thank you. But I also want to have a round of applause for all the parents who have supported you, all the family members who have stood by you all this time. So let's do that. I think getting you to this path of success, they have been instrumental. They're going to be with you. And it's really wonderful to see that show of support here as well. So as we go through the next 3 years, hopefully we'll all graduate in 4 years. But the next 3 years, we're going to continue to build this family, continue to work together. And as you start with this commencement on your research careers with this very important lab coat ceremony. So as you all know, the lab coats were actually originated by scientists and researchers. And then they were co-opted by the medical community. So when medical students start, they have this white coat ceremony. And we said, no, we want our day back. So this is our way of making sure that you're commencing on the right track as you start the summer research program with your mentoring after you've been through this first year of courses and getting you prepared for this. So again, this is a day of celebration, so welcome and thank you all.
Can you folks in the back hear? Yes? Okay, great. This evening, we have asked a scholar from each one of the institutions to, throughout the evening, come up and tell a little bit of their story, whatever they wanted to talk about in their experience, their growth, where they're going. And so our first student tonight is coming to us from Wayne State University. And so Lena Abbas, come on up. And Lena is going to first tell us a little bit about her and her experience, and then she's going to introduce our guest speaker. So thank you, Lena.
So freshman year has finally come to a close, and thank goodness for that, if anybody's a freshman here. We have finally completed the transition into college and hopefully into this new foreign world as an adult. I think we could all agree that time went by really quick. In a blink of an eye, we all went from a college newbie who didn't really know their way around campus, who sort of had to guess which building was which, and were sort of wandering around like tourists in a new city. And now, we're professionals. We know what college is like. We could tell the difference between a good coffee and a bad coffee, but by the way, if you're at Wayne State, it's the 80-cent coffee that you can buy at a vending machine. And we also learned where it's the best places to study, like the Purdy Library. We had gone through this transformation with a surplus of life lessons to carry us throughout the years to come. For example, learning how to survive studying for 10 hours a day and still keep our sanity, and learning how to oddly survive December finals with just cookies and coffee. As a BUILD student, we are given the rare opportunity to also learn how to be part of a diverse community. It's an opportunity that not many college students can claim that they have. It's an opportunity to enrich our college experience and learn valuable lessons about being professionals in the world of science. Throughout our freshman year, we had the opportunity to focus on growing on our relationships with each other and learn how to fit our own personalities into this growing academic world. We actually had a chance to participate in research, such as the RCNs we all got to have part of. And we also got to build our own unique BUILD community by learning more about each other. We learned each other's birthdays and our majors and minors, to learning more major things about our lives, like where we were going to go and what we actually wanted out of the life. We were also able to meet lifelong mentors who actually cared about our aspirations and gave us advice I'm sure we're all going to carry on for the years to come. I am certain with our strong faculty and our great colleagues, we're able to overcome any obstacles as we move into our summer research experience and into the coming years. Now, I would like to introduce our ketone speaker for the night, Dr. Joseph Dunbar. Dr. Dunbar was is currently the Associate Vice President for Research at Wayne State University. Prior to this position, he was a professor and chairman of physiology at Wayne State University School of Medicine. As Vice President for Research, he's responsible for facilitating the research enterprise for the entire university. Even with this major task, he's actively involved in several NIH-funded programs, such as the ReBUILD Detroit program. Dr. Dunbar has been vital in the success of this program, and we are grateful to have him on our team. Now, without further ado, I would like everyone to give a round welcome to Dr. Joseph Dunbar.
Thank you, Lena, for the excellent introduction. And it is a true honor for me to be the inaugural presenter for this occasion. Now, the title of my presentation today is going to be Welcome to the World of Discovery. In this sense, this is the basis of the establishment of the idea of having a lab coat ceremony. And the lab coat depicts individuals, or at least it generates an idea of an individual that is generating new ideas and new ways of doing things. Now, one of the things in science and discovery, it is not always as it is depicted in the movies or on TV, in that science and discovery is quite human, because human beings love and desire to make sense of their world. And when they can't make sense of the world, they invent it. If you go back and you look at what individuals do in research, we can usually give you a nice explanation, such as researchers conduct investigations using the scientific method. But is that the case? And it's not always that way, because very few people start out looking for something, investigating something, without having some sense of structure that they have conjured. For much of human existence, this idea of conjuring an image as to what the world is like has been really fascinating. Just think of when you were growing up, all of you, when you saw something that you didn't understand, you tried to make up things so that you could understand it. If you saw a bee and you didn't recognize it, you would say, oh, it looks like a bee because I saw something else like that, but it could have been something entirely different, a wasp or something of this nature. Now, I would like to review, or at least go over just a few points in history of science and some key changes that occurred. Probably one of the more significant features, and the person that is given the honor of being the sort of the father of science as we know it, is that of Aristotle. He was a very curious individual. He had a lot of interests. Very few people remember the fact that he was interested in organizing animals into groups, understanding the different types of plants, and asking questions such as why certain plants grow and on the ground, some plants grow in the water, and why certain animals can live in water but not always and only live part-time, and some animals live in water continually, like fish. But Aristotle is most famous for the fact that he was one of the first individuals to give human beings a sense of understanding the world. He was wrong, however, but nevertheless, he established this, because Aristotle established the fact that the earth was the center of the universe. And this fit quite nicely with how most people perceive the earth, because they live on it. The earth must be the center of everything. And he described the fact that the heavens evolved around the earth in a very orderly fashion. And you can see Aristotle existed at 384 to 322 BC. And this concept of the world stayed that way for quite a long time. And the next major breakthrough in this particular perception was by Galileo. And Galileo, following Copernicus, changed this by saying the earth evolves around the sun, and the sun is the center of our solar system. Now, in science, you would think that if a person would describe this with evidence, that he would be looked at in a very positive fashion. But Galileo was thought of as being a heretic. He was actually jailed because the church did not like the fact that the church and the earth was no longer the center of the universe. But discovery in this case depended on a couple of things. One, the invention of the telescope, so he was able to see the heavens. The artist was able to scale up and scale down sizes, so therefore there was a better sense of geometry. And also, other individuals were presenting new ideas and different ideas, so therefore there was a community of individuals that at least believed some of his teachings. Another individual that I would like to mention is a person called Lamarck. Lamarck developed what is called the Lamarckian idea of things, and he thought that living systems passed on characteristics that they received during their existence. And this was also believed that if whatever you did in your lifetime could be transmitted to the next generation. On the other hand, following Lamarckian, there was Darwin, and Charles Darwin said, no, animals and living things all evolved from a similar background, and that there was a continuity in living life. And so at that particular time, Lamarck was thought of as being wrong, obviously did not know what he was talking about, and Darwin was the important individual. And Darwin's work was further substantiated by the work of Gregory Mendel, because he was able to show that genes could be transferred from one organism to the next in a very orderly fashion. And then later, Albert Einstein tried to develop a theory to organize the entire universe and our perception of the world. One of the things that I would like to talk about from the standpoint of you as budding scientists is this, and that stemming from genes development is the work of the DNA. People discovered the double helix or DNA, which tied a number of things together. Darwin and his evolution, Mendel and the gene theory, and he said that you can transfer genes in a very orderly fashion, and it was contained in DNA. But as scientists and budding scientists, one of the things that I would like to point out, if you go back to the third spot, Lamarck, in recent times, scientists or individuals that were curious kept making the observation, for example, that children of parents that drink a lot of alcohol tend to be more susceptible to alcohol. Children of parents that are obese tend to have a greater tendency for obesity. And children that are born in war zones tend to have poorer health than children that was not born in war zones. And this carried on for 2 or 3 generations. So was Lamarck right? And it proved that he was, because now we know things as an epigenetic phenomena, in that in history, a lot of things that were proven wrong have been reactivated. And so a good scientist never just accepts anything, but they continue to investigate and try to understand the world that's around them. So a couple of questions. For you, all of you, what caused the Black Plague? What was the response? Any of you remember, read about the Black Plague? This is blue blinding plague of the 15th, 16th century. It killed the population of Europe at the beginning of the 14th century was about 90 million people. The Black Plague killed 50 million. Now, could you imagine the hysteria of having over 6% of the population die? What do you think the people's response was? Absolute panic. But what did they know? Did they know about bacteria? Did they know about viruses? No. Keep in mind, at that particular time, the world order was based on the concept that the gods controlled everything. So in the Black Plague, people responded by using religious rituals, a lot of flagellation, self-flagellation to beat out the bad spirits, and yet they still died. Now let's fast forward another few years. What caused Ebola and what was the response? All of you remember Ebola? Just a couple of years ago. You don't remember some of the news hysteria about Ebola? But now we know that these types of diseases are not caused because you are doing something, the gods are angry with you, but they're actually caused by microorganisms. And the response is to try to figure out what microorganism is causing the disease and how you can control that microorganism. So you can have the same thing in history, but the difference is what scientists and curious people have found out during the interim. And for the ReBUILD scholars, ask yourself, if you wanted to invent or discover something right now, what would it be? If you're going to live this life of discovery and you are anointed as the individuals going forward, what would you want to discover? What would you want to invent? Have you thought about that? Because as a scholar, as a scientist, you have to have some idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish. Some of you may have seen this because this is fairly something that is presented quite a bit. And for all of you, name several inventions that make today's world different than it was 10 years ago. Just think. What inventions do you know now that were different than it was 10 years ago? Now, for people like myself that have had the opportunity that I'm happy with to have lived a couple of 10-year segments, but just a reminder, just think of these things: Facebook, Twitter, cloud computing, iPods, iPads, iWatches, Ubers, All these things didn't exist 10 years ago. And yet, my granddaughter looks at me sometime and she says, "Granddad, oh, you're so poor. You don't understand these things?" But she doesn't have any feel for some of the things that I have a good feel for. I asked her, I said, "Do you know what an 8-track is?" So when you are developing as a researcher, you learn methods and techniques, and hopefully most of you had a journey in this year, especially with your RSCN, where you started to learn the methodology involved in conducting research, some of the techniques, and very importantly in science, you get to know other scholars in the community, because science is based on trading and debating ideas. And research builds on the work of others. If you look back at any science or scientist, they do not stand on a street corner and conjure up their entire scientific basis of whatever they worked on or their discovery by itself. They all worked on something in continuum with other investigators. Or they had some advantages to be able to work on things. Now, in your case, as beginning scholars and investigators, you should never underestimate the advantage that you have, because you have been placed in a community of individuals that are also interested in science and development. You have been encouraged to trade ideas, debate issues, and so therefore you're learning the essential building blocks of what it takes to become a scientist, because no one ever does anything alone. Sometimes it's depicted that way, and I've seen these stories on television where the person said, "I had this bolt of genius that popped in my head, and all of a sudden I was able to discover something." Most of the time you had to have built a number of things and put a number of things in place to be able to perceive that discovery. Now, some of the important features of being a scientist, and science has a purpose, science investigation has a focus on answering questions, and these are the things that you want to incorporate into your being. Science investigation is based on collecting of data, evidence, or information. Now, one of the things that this is very important, because you have to have evidence to convince somebody that you are doing something different or you discovered something different. And through scientific investigation, you develop concepts and theories. Now, the questions that arise from science, and this is something a good scientist will do every day as they start their work, is what it is I'm trying to accomplish. You just can't start working without having some idea of what it is you're trying to do. What problem am I addressing? How did I reach the conclusion? Is there another way of interpreting the data? Now, in many cases, you can give two individuals the same piece of data, and they can draw completely different conclusions. And you have to be open to the fact that data can be interpreted in different ways. I'll give you an example. For many years, individuals had this perception that the size of the head was correlated to intellectual capacity. So individuals, to be able to determine that, they would measure the size of from cranial width. And so people with large cranial width, wide cranial width were thought to have greater capacity than individuals with narrow cranial width. What they didn't ask themselves is why is it sometimes there were people with wide cranial width that were clearly deficient mentally. But nevertheless, scientists even bought into it. Because when I was younger, and you had to work on doing things on microscopes, and with binocular microscopes, every now and then, individuals that wanted to brag about their their brain capacity, they would walk in and grab the binocular things and pull them as far apart as possible to show that they had a wide index. It was good for the discussion at that time, but it didn't necessarily mean anything. Now all of those things have been debunked, and this is a part of history of what we call shoddy or phony science. So what data am I using and to come to the conclusions that I'm coming to, and what assumptions lead me to these conclusions? What am I taking for granted? Now, a lot of times we do this quite a bit. We take things for granted because we only see what we want to see. And one of the things for long-term investigators like myself, I must say that I consider myself an investigator. The best days of my life I spent in the laboratory studying diabetes and related disorders. But it was always good to have students and new students in the laboratory because they would ask me questions that I had already assumed that I knew, and I really didn't. And so they force you to look at things in different ways. So you stop taking things for granted. And from what point of view am I looking at this, and do I need to use a different point of view? I remember if you read some of the famous discoveries, other individuals were making the same observation, but one person was able to see it in a different light. I remember the study on developing the biochemist and the Krebs cycle. People knew all the molecules in between, but no one had ever thought of it as being a cycle. And somebody said, oh, it's a cycle. Then the person won the rest of its history because they were famous for inventing the Krebs cycle, but it was because they had a different insight. So the essentials of investigative or scientific thinking: you need clarity. You need accuracy. This is something that hopefully in RSCN, and in doing this, you started to develop a sense of accuracy, because if you don't do things correctly, nothing happens repeatably. Precision is very important. Relevance. Now, a lot of times, people want to work on a particular project, but the experiments they do is not necessarily connected to the question that they want to ask. And then the depth. Does the answer address the complexities of the problem? Some things are very complex, such as how do you fix all the economic structure of the city of Detroit? Somebody will say, all you have to do is cut taxes. It'll fix everything. It's an activity, but doesn't address the complexity of the problem. Do you need breadth? Do you need to consider other points of view? And logic. Does this really make sense? However, some questions, but this is one that I think most individuals in science should address, and that is intellectual humility, because without humility, things don't happen correctly. And humility is, I don't know everything. Now, this is one of the things that happened especially in your transition from high school to college to graduate school and other areas, when you've been number one in your class, you know how to do things better than any of the other students in the school. You were the number one valedictorian. But the perception that you know all of these things will come to a really halting end, because you have to have humility and admit that you don't always know everything and how things work. And these are some courage, and another one. You have to have perseverance. Most of the time, you need to work at something over and over and over again. I've had students ask me, why do you keep repeating the same thing 4 and 5 times? Because you want to convince yourself that what you're getting is right. And you have confidence in your reasoning, and this is the reason why it's important to discuss things with individuals. Now, this is what non-scientists do. It's true because I believe it. Some individuals think that if whatever they believe, it has to be right. It's true because we believe it. This is groupthink. A lot of individuals get together and they decide this is what the group is going to believe, then it must be true. And this is the most difficult one. It's true. I have always believed it. So it must, Mom said it, and it must be true. Now, although you have started your career as a scientist, I would not recommend to any of you to go home and tell your mom that it's not true. We don't have extra space over to the dormitories to put you up. Okay, I'm going to do, but now, one of the things you're going to do in research is that one of the outcomes, you're going to learn to manage time better, hopefully. I mean, you organize. We've been trying to encourage all of you to meet your deadlines. And the other thing that you have to do in any occupation is to learn to balance multiple demands. Students come to you and say, I have to do this, this, and this, and they look flustered. And they say, other individuals have to do a lot of different things too, so you have to learn to balance all of those demands. And scientists and science give you the idea of capacity for long-term planning. You can't do everything overnight. So you want to develop a plan for the future, learn skills, and develop concepts and understanding in the discipline that you want to follow. But most importantly in science, and this is something I can't emphasize enough, you learn about yourself. This is one of the most important things that you do in science. First of all, you want to find out the things that you enjoy, things that you want. Some individuals, for example, want to be famous. They want to have a greater sense of independence, want high income, low level of stress. It's nice to want all those things, but those are wants. Most of the time, many individuals never achieve that type of the want list. But you should look at yourself and evaluate your strengths, whether your knowledge, your accomplishments, your capacity to communicate, and your personal traits. Because if you look at yourself honestly and evaluate your strengths, this is a very important activity. Another thing in science you need is that of mentors in science, and you also need mentors in life. And you need many mentors, many more than one. And you should not be afraid to interact with your mentors. And because people with effective mentors tend to have improved academic performance, increased productivity, increased professional skills, a higher self-confidence, and expand network of social and professional networks. Now, another thing the students always ask, how hard should I work? You work, how much time do you have? Do you have 168 hours in a week? You have to go to sleep. You have to, in a year, you have to sleep. Takes up about part of it. Food, eat, travel. And you have, in this case, a remaining 75 hours. So what do you do with that time? So you have to make choices. So you do learning, recreation, classes, research, future career, employment, look at how you want to be employed. But the most important thing, what do I want to do with my life? And because this journey into a research career is about what you want to do with your life. You want to go to school, a job, a career, but most importantly, all of you, the most important thing you want to do with your life is to be a success. And I wish you success in all of your endeavors. And as a quote, whatever you dream, you can begin. Boldness and genius and power and magic is in it. So thank you for the opportunity, and have a great journey into your career as a scientist. Thank you.
Saying yes. I won't tell the crowd how hard it was to get you to say yes, Dr. Dunbar, but he did, so I'm very grateful.
Don't tell secrets.
Okay, but I'm glad that you did. Thank you very much. Next, we'll keep moving right along. And so next we're going to have another student come up, and this time Tierra Modock. Tierra, you're in the building. I saw you. Don't be shy. Tierra is coming to us from Marygrove College, and she is going to tell a little bit about her experience and then take us into the introduction of the Research Coordination Network professors. And from this point on, we call that our RCN. Okay, Tierra, come on up.
Good evening, I'm Tierra Modock, and I will be a junior at Marygrove College this coming fall. I joined the BUILD program this past fall, and I'm really glad that I did. One of my professors was telling me about the program and how he thought I'd be a good candidate. So I talked to Ms. Kiana Daniels, who is over the program at Marygrove College, and eventually I joined. I'm really happy with my decision to join the program because I'm meeting new people who have similar goals as me, but also because of the summer research experience I am getting. If it were not for the BUILD program, I would be doing something completely different this summer, something totally unrelated to what I want to do or what field I want to go into. I started working in the lab last week, and I was a little afraid because I didn't know or much about what I was doing. A lot of what we were doing was organic chemistry, and I haven't taken those courses yet, so I was a little nervous. But however, everyone in the lab is really helpful, making me feel more confident in what I'm doing. I'm happy to be in this program, or in this lab, because I know once I take organic chemistry, it won't be as challenging for me as it would have been without this experience. This is definitely a program that I will recommend to future students I come across so they can share the BUILD experience as well. Part of our first academic year experience in the ReBUILD program is to get acquainted with the process and methods of research, what research is, why it is important, and how do we get started. We were exposed to all these questions and the answers in our RCN, Research Coordination Network, courses both fall and winter semesters. This year, we are all graced with having a very dedicated, exciting, and knowledgeable RCN faculty members who patiently, well, most days they're patient, taught us not only methodology, but their own personal example, how to become not just good, but great researchers. I'd like to take this moment on behalf of all the scholars at each institution and say thank you to our RCN faculty. If you are present, please stand when I call your name. From Marygrove College, Biology, Dr. Abigail Fusaro. Chemistry, Dr. Diana Tomko. Health Disparities, Dr. Karen Frederick. From University Detroit Mercy, Biology, Dr. Stephanie Conant and Dr. Jacob Kagi.
Joshua Thompson on that, please. Dr. Joshua Thompson.
And also Dr. Joshua Thompson. Chemistry, Dr. Kendra Evans and Dr. Catherine Lanigan. Health Disparities, Dr. Christian Abraham. From Wayne State University, Biology, Dr. Weilong Kao. Chemistry, Dr. Andrea Meddy. Health Disparities, Dr. Heather Dillaway. We would also like to recognize the faculty and administrators who will be helping with the co-ceremony. Dr. Farron McEntee from Wayne State University. Dr. Jeanne Andrioli from Marygrove College. And Dr. Elizabeth Kirchhoff Roberts from University Detroit Mercy. Thank you all, and we would not be where we are tonight without your support, concern, and constant care. Thank you.